I was a huge fan of Law and Order in the early years. The show was still good after the first few seasons, but as time went on, it became increasingly more and more like what was borderline a different show. I have not been watching any of Dick Wolf's Chicago shows, but when I found out that the main character of this show, Chicago Justice, Peter Stone, when I found out that he's the son of Ben Stone from the first four seasons of Law and Order, I was intrigued because Ben Stone is one of my favorite characters from Law and Order. I was confused as to why they made this connection, though. The character of Ben Stone was on Law and Order so long ago that I doubt many people would even remember him. And given the short amount of time he spent on the show, some people might even get the mistaken impression that he was a failed character. I was intrigued, though. I later found out that the head writer had worked on those early years of Law and Order, and not only had Lorraine Toussaint reprised her role as Shambhala Green, which would only make sense as the main character is the son of Ben Stone and she was something of a foil for him, but also that Richard Brooks was due to reprise his role as Paul Robinette. And being that I'm a fan of his time on the show, I just had to see this episode entitled Uncertainty Principle, which I will review for this video. I had missed the premiere episode, so I was coming in with very little knowledge of the characters. The case involves a black suspect who dies under questionable circumstances, and eventually the SA investigators discovered that the suspect was roughed up earlier by a black cop. This brings in Paul Robinette, who has to defend the police officer against Peter Stone. The episode examines the prejudice against cops that's so prevalent in our society today. We don't see much of it on screen, but all the characters have dialogue discussing the issue. Just one example would be Paul Robinette saying something to the effect of, "Hell of a world we live in today. A world where the word of a murderer carries more weight than that of a cop." I liked that the character of the race-baiting demagogue in the episode was white. It shows that everyone can engage in race-baiting. And I liked that the cop being accused of the crime was black, because then it's less of a black-white issue and more of a society cop issue. And of course the character has dialogue where he states that because he's a cop, other people think he's a race traitor and that he's experienced various forms of harassment. The highlight of the episode is definitely the interaction between Peter Stone and Paul Robinette. And I thought that Richard Brooks has what's probably the best showing in the episode, though part of it might just be my nostalgia with the character and my familiarity with the character. For those of you unfamiliar with him, the character of Ben Stone on the original Law and Order was a paragon of virtue, and he was truly the heart of the series. The relationship between the younger Stone and Robinette really plays it up, with Peter Stone mentioning how both he and Robinette had left Ben. Things come full circle for Robinette, as he essentially mentors his old mentor's son in the episode. It doesn't explicitly mention the episodes of Law and Order that I'm thinking of, but you do get the sense that Robinette once again considers himself a lawyer who's black, which is great for longtime fans such as myself, and it helps with Paul Robinette coming full circle, especially given his guest appearances on Law & Order, where he had become something of an issues lawyer. He's still an issues lawyer in the episode, but this particular situation is somewhat reversed between him and Peter Stone. You get a sense that he's returned to Ben Stone's ideals, and by the end of the episode he's helped Peter return to Ben Stone's ideals as well, when Peter decides to call Ben for the first time in years. No appearance, not even a voiceover from Michael Moriarty, however. As strong as their storyline together was, I do wonder how people who aren't familiar with Law & Order are going to react to it. On the negative side, the case seemed a bit random, especially the ending to it. Outside of all the discussions on the prejudice against cops, the way the case played out was pretty bland and uninteresting. It was fun seeing so many veteran actors that I've been watching for so long, from John Seda to Joel Carter to Carl Weathers, and guest appearances from Jason Begay and Lisa Zane. When I saw John Seda, I immediately said to myself, Falzone. Overall, I found the episode bold in its sympathetic portrayals of police officers in society today. It wasn't perfect, but it gave me a small taste of that old nostalgic Law & Order feel, and for that, I give the episode a B. On a final note, I thought the very end of the episode might have benefited from an actual on-camera appearance from Ben Stone, but that would create some issues, not to mention potentially confusing the audience. Despite considering myself on the side of the anti-SJWs who generally tend to be pro-Trump, I am not a Trump supporter, but I do think there's one good thing with his presidency. Now that he is president, with any luck, and because of Justin Trudeau, maybe Michael Moriarty might return to the States for a guest spot on Chicago Justice. Hopefully it works out, but I don't know if his voice is strong enough to talk. It sounded pretty weak on Masters of Horror. I'm still undecided as to whether or not I'll stick with Chicago Justice. My next video would probably be a review of the episode of Law & Order that this episode made me think of. Anyway, that's the review. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for listening.